Assalamualaikum everybody. Today we have a really special guest for me. We are with brother Daniel. We are gonna talk about studying in England. I got lots of questions to ask him. And brother, tell us something about yourself. Where are you from? What have you been here? Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Mohammed Danial. I am from Kashmir. It's a place between India and Pakistan, famous for a lot of reasons, which we'll not go into. I am studying law. In fact, I am due to graduate at the end of this month. My first bachelor's degree was in sociology, after which I started on my second bachelor's degree in law at King's College London.
King's College London.
So yeah, that's me.
Okay, and how does the system work here? How can someone start studying at a university in England? I mean, it's just a bachelor's degree.
So the system is very automated and online. It's a very well-defined system. So if you want to start on a bachelor's degree in the United Kingdom, so the standard system would be you would have to pass your school level exams, which have different names, different places. Here they typically call it A-levels. You could be where I come from, it's the school leaving exam. Depends on which board you're doing. I did the Central Board of School Education, so we just call it Class 12 exams. So in Turkey, you might be known by a different name. So essentially, you have to finish school, and then you go onto this platform called UCAS, which gives you a choice. Typically, I think of 5 universities that you can apply to maximum. And I think for some courses, you have to choose between Oxford and Cambridge. You can't apply to both. I don't know if that still holds true, but that's at least what was the case when I applied for my course. So you apply, you upload your grades. It's a long drawn process, takes a couple of months, to and fro. When you get an acceptance, or even before your acceptance, your university admissions team might ask you for additional documents, all sorts of documents, and you need to keep uploading them. But it might be a long drawn process. Nonetheless, it is online. You can basically, provided you have the grades and requirements, get an admission into a university pretty much from your bedroom.
So
and
how do you prove your English level then?
The English level, most universities would require you to take IELTS. It's generally an exam that is conducted by the British Council, so it's something that's very intimately connected with the UK higher education system. So you take IELTS, and different universities will have a different requirement of you. So lower tier universities, maybe a 6.5, a 7. Higher tier universities would want you to get a 7.5. Remember, the maximum band you can get on an IELTS test is a 9, which you can rarely score. So 7.5 is a very good band, and which means you are pretty much proficient with all forms of the language, written, spoken, everything. So yeah, that's it. In addition to that, of course, I'd like to add here that depending on what kind of course you're going to, are you going into a strictly professional course like law, medicine? So for that, the requirements might be in addition to your school leaving exam from your country. You might also need to take a professional entrance test. For example, for law, you have to take what they call oh my god, did I forget the name of the test? LNAT. So you take the LNAT for law, you take a different exam for medicine. So these are few courses where you have to take a test in addition to your your school leaving examination. But mostly for most social sciences courses, or courses that are for some reason branded not professional. I mean, although I don't believe in that terminology, because you can make a profession out of any course. So for most of them, you would have to get a particular percentage in your school leaving exams, and that should be fine. And in addition to that, you have to write an essay, which is a statement of purpose, explaining your motivations of why you want to take up a particular course, why you will benefit from taking that particular course, and why you are a well-suited candidate, in comparison to others. You also
have to show off.
You have to show off. You have to basically sell yourself. You have to not only say that you're smart enough, but say that you are the sort of candidate that stands to benefit from this sort of education. There's a nuance here. There's a difference. You'd also require 2 recommendation letters, typically 2 from your professors.
Where can students get that?
From teachers. Typically, a student should try to get it from, say, a head teacher or a head of department at the school, because that gives it some weight and authority. But there is no such restriction. You can pretty much get it from your favorite teacher, or the teacher who you are a favorite student of. Basically, someone who would back you as much as possible, but someone who would really say that I really do believe whatever the student wrote in his statement of purpose holds true, although not in those words, but basically sending that sort of a message,
Yeah,
So,
but the question is, bro, we have like 2 exams in Turkey that almost everybody has to take them in order to get, high grade university maybe.
Mhm.
And don't they have any university entrance exam or something? How do they like
Here in the
test
UK.
your
Yeah.
level? Yeah.
So it depends what sort of a university are you applying to. As I said, for most courses, your school leaving examination from your country should be enough. But upper class universities like what we know as the Russell Group in the UK, it's an equivalent of the Ivy League in the United States. So you have a very elite, exclusive set of universities which produce high quality research and output. So they're just branded here as the Russell Group.
Oxford or Cambridge must have something special like to test their
Yes.
candidates.
Most upper grade class universities would first of all require you to get a higher grade in your school leaving examination as compared to other
your
universities.
school leaving exam is
So
important.
it's
as well,
important,
so-
yes, 100%. So for example, if you want to get into the Russell groups, I would say a safe score from where I come from for India on the school leaving exam would be 90%.
90.
Some courses would maybe
Was it
accept
hard for you to get 90 or?
90. It wasn't really hard for me, but if you're asking statistically, 90% and above would be scored by 1% of the candidates nationally. So statistically, yes, but I think if you are committed enough and if you know how the exam works, you can score a 90 plus in India. On top of that, my degree required an LNAT as well. So that's there. But yes, some other universities like Oxbridge will also typically call you for an interview, right? So for Oxford, you'll have to sit an interview in addition to your school leaving examination, your statement of purpose, your recommendations. If they get accepted, then you get called to an interview stage. If you get accepted from the interview, then you make it to the university. But for most other universities, you will pretty much have to not sit in for any interview and get it done with your school grades. So that's the extra kind of bar that Oxford adds. I'd like to mention something very crucial here. So even though a university tells you that a 90% is what would be required, what they mean is what would, without that you would pretty much not be eligible. Your application will not be looked at. This is something that will make you eligible.
However,
so any particular score, any score at all, whether in your school leaving exam or for degrees like law, your LNAT and entrance tests that you have to take, any score does not qualify or disqualify you. And that's the official position, and it generally holds true. There are students which can, so LNAT has you can get, the total score is out of a 40 or something, and 24, 25, 26 is a very good score. There are students who have been rejected by universities with a 27 or a 28, and there are students who have been accepted in those same universities with a 21 or a 22. Similar with the school leaving exam. Someone might have a 90% get rejected, someone might have an 85 get rejected. So the university holds a thorough discretion to look at you as a whole package and reject you, no reasons given, and you cannot ask for a reason, they won't give you a reason. So pretty much
it's just up to them.
Yes, and that kind of has its disadvantages and can be upsetting sometimes, but also has an advantage. For example, sometimes you might have done not so well on your school leaving exam, and there might be so many other candidates who have done better than you. But because that alone does not disqualify you, what that means is you can compensate for your low exam result with some other quality, extracurriculars. You might have done debating, sport. Bring that in. Say that on your statement of purpose, right? That I was the captain of my sports team. I won this many debating competitions. But of course, this goes without saying that if you have scored below a particular mark, like if 90 is what they say as eligibility, and you have like a 70, then you should probably look at applying somewhere else, because that would be a waste of because it's costly to apply as well.
How much is it?
I think the application, I'm not sure right now, but cumulatively it will cost around £100 to apply to all 100 or more. I think more than that. So it's not some sort of a free application kind that we have back home.
Not that cheap.
It's not that cheap, So don't waste your attempts, and also strategically apply. If you're applying to 5 universities and you want to get into a fancy school and you have the grades for it,
you have to pay these 100 each university.
I don't think so. The fees you pay with UCAS is one fees. Don't quote me on the £100. I'm not sure, but whatever you're paying one fees. That will allow you to apply to 5, right?
I see.
So I would say even if you're very sure of your credentials, your grades, and you're a smart student, you've done well, you're hardworking,
Yeah.
you have the grades, still keep a couple of universities as backup.
Hmm.
You don't apply to the top 5. I mean, typically you don't. Apply to, top 3 universities, maybe keep a couple of universities as a backup. They don't have to be the
You
lowest
have
of
to
the
have a
low.
backup.
Yeah, they don't have to be the lowest of the lower
Okay.
run, but they can be maybe
Somewhere
tier
in
2
the middle.
universities somewhere in the Russell group, or maybe a little bit outside of the
Okay.
Russell group in terms of the quality perception that we have, right? So that's the thing. Also remember one thing about the applications, because we're discussing it and we'll move on, is that you cannot tailor your application to a university, right? So, and this is important because at master's level, PhD level, you can write in your statements that I'm applying to your university because I feel that I'm specifically suited to your university and your university is suited to me because of blah 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 reasons.
Yeah.
With UCAS, you send one application, just your SOP, you don't name a university in it, and you say, I'm suited for this course, I'm suited for this degree. Because that same application will go to all 5 universities. So if you mistakenly drop Oxford, then another university is probably going to get offended.
Yeah.
If you don't want us, we don't want you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
So
right.
don't do that. You write a neutral application as far as university choice is concerned. You make every university feel like you want them equally. You know what I mean? So that's what you do.
Yeah. And I think they might need professional help during this process as well to write these letters properly. And
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends on a lot of things. It depends, number one, on...
because it's not easy to convince Oxford,
Yeah,
Cambridge.
yeah. I mean, a lot of students do write them themselves. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on, number one, are you a native speaker of English? If you're not...
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
From Turkey.
Yeah, and if you're not... I mean, you could be from Turkey, but your English could still be very good in certain cases.
Yeah.
Probably not true for school-leaving student stage. But if you feel like you want to really get your grammar and your style all going, so go to a professional, an educational consultant, the admissions people, they are experts.
Yeah.
They're experts both in language and also experts with what kind of stuff universities like, because they've been doing it for so many years. So that would be a good idea. I did mine myself. Most of the people in my friend group back in Kashmir or in India, they did it themselves. But that's also given, owed to the fact that the education system in India is pretty much English driven. The medium of instruction is English, and the kind of schools and universities that I came from, the kind of people that go there are people who come from a privileged, class of the society. So they have the kind of cultural capital from their very formative years. Even their parents have spoken to them in English. The school they went to was an English school. The university they came to was an
I
English.
don't think we have such
Yeah,
families in Turkey.
probably not. So yeah, that's worth considering. Like, weigh your own options. If you're confident enough, write it by all means yourself. But if not, again, don't waste your attempt. Check up with a professional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's move on from this topic to another one. Let's say we got an accept from these universities and we're gonna start studying. And how long will it take for us to do a bachelor's degree?
Yeah. So
It's like 4 years in Turkey basically, and for medicine it's like 6 years.
yeah. So most degrees in Turkey, bachelor's would be 4, as in the US, I'm guessing. In the UK, typically it's 3. So for the bulk of degrees that you'll do, social sciences, computer, this and that, it'll all be 3.
So you studied for 3 years
to get a bachelor's degree. Law, 3. But medicine, obviously, as in other
Is
places,
it 4 or 5?
Not sure. I think it's 5.5 or something.
5.5. Okay.
Not sure, but obviously medicine, like any other place in the world, is longer than
the
others, right? So that's there, but typically an undergraduate for most of the people watching would be a 3-year degree. Obviously, there is an option here in the UK that you can, if you're doing a degree like computer science or some professional software degree, you can take 1 year. You have to notify your university and you have to go through some procedures, but you can take 1 year in the middle as a placement year, and you'll get a visa for it, an extension. So that will make your degree technically like a 4-year degree, but you'll not be studying for that 1 year. You'll be doing a study-related placement with a company.
It's
provided
like an internship or something.
Yeah, it's a 1-year thing. You work there sort of full time.
Yeah, we have this as well. If you study law, you have to do a year of internship.
No, but that's at the end of the degree. Here you can do it at the middle of the degree. So it's optional.
Okay,
In Turkey, you have to do it. Here it's optional. You can go do your placement year, provided a company likes you and you're able to find someone who employs you for a year.
Okay.
You take a leave from university, you complete your year, and then you come back to university to do the remainder of your degree.
Okay.
So that way you can get sort of a 4-year experience, and I think it's pretty much worth it. I have a very close friend who was studying computer science. He's due to complete, and he took out 1 year as as a placement year. And so he will, by the end of his degree, he will be here for 4 years.
Okay.
So you can.
But it wasn't compulsory. Yeah, it's up.
No, it wasn't compulsory at all. I think it adds value to you as a candidate for eventual job market.
Okay.
But it's not compulsory by any means.
And so during our studying in England, what do you have to do to finish your study? I mean, do you have lots of essays to write, or do you have lots of homework to do, or paper-based exams?
Right. So you're basically asking mostly about the content of the degree and the assessments. So
I'm not able to make a comparison between Turkey and England because I don't know about Turkey, but
but I think this question vastly varies. The answer to this question vastly varies from degree to degree.
Yeah.
But generally, in an overarching way, what can be said is you'll have to write essays roughly throughout the semester. So it's a semester form that the degrees function here. 2 semesters a year typically, and 2 semesters another year, 2 semesters the third year. So 6 semesters in all. So every semester you'll have your essays being released a little bit in advance of the exams. So you'll write them, finish them, submit them maybe 1 month before the exam, and then you'll have 1 month to prepare for the exam, and you'll sit your exams, right? So for law, I mean, obviously, again, even within law, it varies from module to module. But typically what it is if you're studying 4 modules for a semester, you'll write 4 essays and then sit 4 exams, right? Next semester, 4 essays, 4 exams. Again, some modules might require you to only write an essay, no exam, or a bigger weightage for the essay, lesser for the exam, or it might require you to write a dissertation, no essay, no exam, like a 10,000 word dissertation. Depends, but it is some sort of a combination between essays and exams. Generally, essays have a weightage of about 30 to 40% and exams 60 to 70%. So that will make up your assessment and grade for one whole module. This obviously will vary too much. For example, in computer sciences, they have courseworks which are very technical. I don't know about that, how that functions. So obviously, it's worth checking up with your course at the university. All university websites, remember, have the entire syllabus of your degree given on their website. You can go and check it up. They have for each module that they have available, they will tell you what kind of assessment will we do. Will we test you by an exam, by an essay, by a combination? So the good thing with British universities is they have comprehensive websites and online presence. So particularly on this question of how will I be tested, what subjects will I be studying, within that subject, what topics will I be studying, it's all there. And you'll be surprised with the amount of detail they put into it.
So we can find out these things before we start studying.
Before you start studying, well before you start studying,
Okay.
And it's worth doing that. And that might even help you with your university choice, because some universities will give you modules and subjects that are more suited to your personality and your aspirations. Others might not. So I would highly encourage anyone who's trying to apply to once look at the courses, the modules, the assessment patterns that are being offered.
And I think you haven't mentioned homework. It's like something fundamental in Turkey. We can't even imagine a study system without homework. What about it?
Yeah, so I was only touching on assessments, but if you ask me a question about what would you need to do to generally excel in a university, there's nothing like homework here. For example, you don't. There's no such thing.
We can't understand. This
same with me, because we're Eastern people. We have a sort of a stick on our heads hanging all the time. Here, you don't have any such thing. See, you will never be assigned anything that if you don't do it, you will be punished or taken to the task in class or called out for it. There's no such thing. But that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of hard work that you need to do. Because if you don't do that hard work, you'll still not do well on your degree. So what I mean by that is, I'm studying law. I mean, this is kind of more true for law than other courses, but it's roughly true for all courses. Law just generally globally is known as a course where you have to read a lot. So this is how your degree will function on an everyday basis. You'll have lectures, then you'll have tutorials, and then you'll have seminars. Some courses might have only lectures and seminars. So lectures are your whole class that is studying your degree will basically sit in a lecture hall, maybe 100 people at once, and the teacher will speak audiovisually with presentations, a microphone, with speakers, this and that. So this is your whole class sitting. Not much discussion, not much to and fro, not many questions and answers. Just a lecture delivered with a presentation. This same lecture, the topic it's delivered on, will then be followed up by a tutorial, which will be a small group thing. So you'll have your dedicated assigned tutorial leader. He'll sit with 4, 5, 10 of you to have a dedicated 1 hour, to and fro discussion, kind of unpacking the whole subject and answering all your doubts. Then you'll have a seminar. These only happen twice or thrice. And in some universities, tutorials are called seminars, so it's sort of an interchangeable. But in my law degree, then we had seminars for each module, maybe twice or thrice in the whole semester. These are 2-hour-long, intensive small group research seminars. So you have to come with something and present it, and then there'll be a discussion on that. So now what kind of homework you have, so to speak?
Yeah.
The homework you have is you're done with the lecture, fine. You don't typically need to go prepared for the lecture because there's not going to be any discussion, you won't be asked anything. But then when you go for the tutorial of that same lecture, you'll have a huge reading list. Now you're not obligated to do it, fine, don't do it.
Okay.
Turn up to the tutorial without doing it. But it will count for something. At the end, when you sit for exams, the exams are designed in such a way that students who have not done their readings for tutorials regularly, it'll show in the exam. Because students who have done these readings, their performance will be markedly better. And the readings are not a joke. Because the readings at British universities, particularly in a degree like law or an intensive degree where the amount to read is a lot, for a single tutorial, we would be given like 3-4 cases to read, 5 cases, sometimes 6 cases, and the teacher would recommend read them in full. Now, the average length of one judgment, the average length of one case judgment is like 60 pages. Now, if you're given 6-7 of them, right, read them. Then one book chapter, 30 more pages. Then a recommended article from a research journal, 30 pages. Another recommended article from
at least 500.
So like on any given day, for one tutorial of one module, you might have to read 300-400 pages. Is that homework? Probably not. Is that important? Very much so.
Yeah.
So no homework does not mean no hard work. You'll suffer at the end, so you have to keep reading. And I kind of like this culture where people are not really forcing you for it, and you do it out of your own volition, because that at the end of the day, on the class marks profile, the people who've got higher marks, it shows that they got it out of their own free will and volition. There was no force involved here. These are the people who were actually driven to work hard. So that's more representative of how you are as a human being, as opposed to being just working because of the threat of insult or punishment in classroom, which we have back home. So this is a more healthier system, I would say.
Yeah. Bro, I can imagine. Okay, this is the most vital part now. We're gonna talk about fees, bro. How much they're gonna cost us.
Right.
Okay, and the first question is, because it's a bit different from Turkey, I wanna highlight this section. Is there any government university or private university, or even is there any difference between these two?
Right. Yeah, I think the demarcation between public and private in higher education in the UK is faded out. It's not. I know what it's like in Turkey. I know what's like back home. Private is private. Public is public. It's clear. Here, these universities, most of them that you know about, function as independent private bodies, but of course supported and funded by the government. So it's a very sort of fused sort of a system. So you cannot really, most of the universities that people apply for are of this kind. Any university you pick, Oxford is private, but also has an active support of the government.
Definitely.
King's is like that, LSE is like that, Cambridge is like that, all big universities are like that. So pretty much any university you apply to, you cannot say that I'm applying to a government university, because there is actually no such thing on the ground. These are all sort of fused. The system here is basically fundamentally different to what we have back home. So that's what it is.
So we can't study in England for free then?
No. You can study in England free, and we'll come to that. Via scholarships, which we'll come to how many scholarships there are for bachelors, what kind of scholarship prospects you have. But typically, the scholarships aren't free either. You have to pay. The scholarship pays for you. You know what I mean? Because wherever you're getting the scholarship from, they pay your university. You cannot study in Britain for free. You pay for it, your dad pays for it, your company pays for it, your scholarship pays for it, but you pay for it. So, number one, you pay for it, and you pay for it through your nose. It's very, very steep. Education in the United Kingdom is very, very steep. So we can go at length to discuss the advantages of the British education system, and there are many disadvantages as well. But if we were to only focus on the advantages, sometimes, for some students, all of those advantages would be outweighed by the cost alone. You don't need to mention another disadvantage. The cost alone will be it'll outweigh every good thing that there is about the system, because it's that much. So, obviously, check with your course. Very simple. Google blah 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 university blah 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 course fees. You get it.
Okay.
I'll give you a rough measure.
Roughly,
a degree right now would cost you, depending on which university and what course. Although costs across universities for those for courses are standardized. they might vary from course to course, but they do not vary so much university to university because of government regulation.
Yeah.
Particularly for domestic students. I mean, we are not talking to domestic students here.
Yeah.
For UK students, the cost for every course almost at every university is £9,250. For others, it varies. For us, internationals varies a little bit, but not so much. So anywhere between £19,000 to £24,000 for normal degrees. Medicine, I suspect, is more expensive per year, and then it's also a longer degree, so it's really expensive. It's expensive per year, and then it's also like a 5-year degree. So medicine is like doubly, triply expensive than a normal degree.
But still, this difference between citizens and international students is kind of something big.
It's huge, double.
It's
More than
double.
More than that. For my course, more
I
than
don't
double.
think it's fair.
And a domestic student for a law degree at King's pays, as I said, 9,250. An international like me pays 23,000 something. So that's double. That's double, more than double by quite a bit, right? So that's just tuition fees. Keep in mind that's just your tuition. You have to then have other costs, and you have to kind of figure them into your calculation as well, which is your living costs, accommodation, general miscellaneous costs of living, transport, upkeep, stationery, books, clothing, bills. So all of that, and we'll go into we can unpack that a little bit further.
Yeah, before that, I would like to ask you that what kind of jobs you can do during studying here, and how much is the average wage?
Sometimes students think that they can kind of single-handedly manage the costs of living in UK by doing a part-time job. I don't think that is plausible or that is doable for most students. I mean, unless you're some superhuman, or even if you are, I don't think it is. Because there's a cap. You can work as a student during term time only 20 hours per week. During term time. Now what is term time? Term time is the official time that university assigns to you, which is the degree time, which is not the holiday time.
Is it like 9 months or something?
No, it's all on months. For example, in a semester, the days that you have to basically, the university is on and it's teaching, that is term time. The classes are going on. When the holiday happens, for example, Christmas break, it's non-term time.
So
Summer break is non-term time. During non-term time, you can work unlimited. Right?
Okay.
During non-term time, if you decide to not go home in Christmas breaks, stay back in the summer break, work as much as you want, no cap. But during term time, when you're supposed to be going to university, the cap is 20 hours per week. Now, that is not an entirely bleak or dark picture, because if you're able to work about 10 hours a week, 20 hours, it's the cap, but every student won't be able to put in 20 hours, depending on degree, how busy they are, how demanding the course is. But 10 hours per week, if you do it fairly regularly, you should be able to sustain quite a big chunk of your living costs. I would say pretty much everything apart from accommodation and tuition you pay, then everything, food, transport, living, clothing, everything can come from that. And if you do, depending on which also brings us to the question of how much do typical part-time student jobs pay. So there is this concept of basic minimum wage obviously in Western countries and elsewhere now as well. So the basic wage hovers somewhere between £7 to £8. But then many employers will give you what they call the living wage. There's a difference between basic and living wage. Now, living wage is the ideal that the government specifies for a particular area.
I think it was like £10.50 or something.
Exactly, it's for £10.50 for London, which is the government telling employers that ideally for people to survive in London, this is what they should be making minimum per hour.
To survive,
but I think you can do fine with that, because the estimates that the government gives here for just survival are generous estimates. So 7-8 is basic. The employer is not supposed to give you 10.5, but many will. So let's not put it at 10.5, let's not put it at 7. You'll typically be making 8 to 9. That's a safe estimate to put into your calculation before coming here. 8 to 9 pounds an hour, 10 hours
a week,
40 hours, 10 hours a week, because everyone can't do 20. I'm doing a rough calculation for them, right? So 10 hours a week, 4 weeks in a month, 40 hours, 40 into,
let's say roughly
10. You can make £400, £500 a month, without taking a major toll on your degree. Now, again, do not put it as, okay, 400, if I'm going to stay in the UK for 10 months, that means I make 400 every month. No, you won't. There's exam times. There's times when, you'll have to stop working. There's times when you'll have to write your essays. There's times when you'll have to give up. These jobs are part-time for a reason because you don't know.
Yeah, you have to study.
You have to study.
More
So
priority study.
always whatever calculation you're making of the income that will come through the part-time job, slash it by a little bit to be on the safer side. But I think any student who's making £400 term time for most of the month, 400 should be fine for a lot of things that you'll do in the month.
My calculation was completely different from yours, bro. Before I talking to you, it was like 20 hours in a week and 10 per hour, and it will make like 800 per month.
See, the thing is, there will be months where you will be able to do 20, but that's not the standard.
Yeah, it's not regularly.
Particularly if you're doing medicine, if you're doing engineering, if you're doing law.
Okay.
20 hours per week, every week, no chance.
The biggest portion to mention, bro. What about rent?
The rent, yes. So, here's the good news. Most things in London, if you're very smart, if you're very meticulous, if you're very calculative, you can bring it down to costs the kind that you're used to in Turkey or in Eastern countries. You can. You can shop from particular places and bring food down. You can shop for meat from particular places and get halal meat cheap, as maybe even as cheap as in Turkey.
Yeah.
Sometimes Turkey might actually be more expensive. Everything
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Okay. Pound is 12.
Yeah, fine. Alright, maybe not at the moment. What is not in any way comparable to the costs in Eastern countries is accommodation and transport. And here I'm talking about public transport because it's supposed to be cheap. So, with accommodation, you have two choices. You either stay in a halls of residence, which is a university accommodation, or you stay in...
But university accommodations are like exorbitant, bro. Isn't it?
Yeah, so and the other choice is that you stay in private accommodations. Now, some of the university accommodations are not as exorbitant as all of them. It depends on which accommodation you apply for, what kind of room you apply for, how big is your room. For example, you'll pay lesser for an...
Tell us the cheapest one, bro, for
Yeah,
university.
so I was actually living in the cheapest for my university in my first year.
How much was it?
That was about £650 a month.
A month, okay.
Yeah. But that didn't come with a washroom of its own. You had to share. Then if you wanted one with a washroom, that is called an ensuite room. Goes a little bit higher. If you go up, if you want a studio, which is one which has a washroom, a bedroom, and a cooking space, that goes a little bit higher. But halls of residence, the minimum you can get is 650. Now that for some people is still very expensive. What you can then do is find a couple of mates, go out there and rent, for example, a one-bedroom apartment. Right? Now, a one-bedroom apartment, there are places in London where you can find them for £1,000 and £1,100 a month, which means that if one person lives in the living room and treats that as a room, and one person lives in a bedroom, that's a room, and two people are living in a £1,000 apartment, that's 500 each. You might find one bedrooms for even 900 on the outskirts, on the extremities of London, East London, West London, North London, Central probably not. So then you might be able to bring your accommodation costs down to 450 to 500 minimum. Because see, you have to, there's the other consideration as well. Most of the university, if you're studying in London, and we're saying London a lot because this is supposed to be a UK thing.
But we're in London,
if you're studying,
London in detail. So.
If you're studying in an out of London university, don't consider these costs. There is a remarkable difference. Go look up your city. It might be £100-200 cheaper per room compared to London. So you should look up Nottingham. You can look up Liverpool. Whatever you're planning to study, look that up. This is very London specific advice. In London, I told you the costs for university accommodations. Now you might have this idea that on some far flung area of London on the extremity, I'm finding a room for like 400, which there are rooms for 500. Yusuf will tell you there are rooms for far lesser when I'm going there. But the thing is, you're gonna pay for transport, buddy. It's gonna come to the same thing as renting a decently priced apartment in Central.
100 or something, 150 sometimes.
Well, we'll come to that. So consider that. If you go too far away and your commute to university is a long commute, because London, remember, it's zone-wise. So if you're commuting from zone 3 to zone 1, the monthly pass for the train or the bus for the train that you'll have to get will increase by that much, right? And we'll come to the transport costs now. So consider these costs. And now I'll also, before going to the transport, I'll actually give them a cumulative figure of what the UK government and universities recommend you have in your pocket before coming to London. and you need to actually show that in your bank account for the whole of your degree, I think, or for 1 year. Sorry, not for whole of degree. For 1 year, you have to show that you have the amount to sustain you for 1 year in London in your bank account for the past 3 months. I'll repeat that. You have to show that you have in your bank account, or in the bank account of your father or whoever is sending you here, an amount of money which is equivalent to the living cost in London for 12 months, and this amount should be in your bank for 2 to 3 months consistently. It cannot go down from that amount for even 1 day. Otherwise your visa will be rejected. What is that amount? That amount is £1,250 a month. So again, can you survive, including your transport, accommodation, living, everything, can you survive for lesser than £1,250? Probably can. But when you're doing the calculation, use the £1,250. It's a safe thing. It's a safe. The government uses that guideline, and you should too. But I will tell you from my personal experience, I have survived fairly comfortably for less than that, and fairly consistently. But again, if you're a person who likes to spend a lot of money, shop a lot, you'll probably not be able to do that. You have to be very careful to bring it less than that. So, transport, everything included, £1,250 a month for London, right? Coming to transport now. You buy a monthly pass, right? It'll typically cost you, as a student, £90 a month for everything included. You can take unlimited number of rail rides, tube rides within London, and bus rides and everything. But it will cost you £90 only if you take it from one zone to another. For example, if your university is in Zone 1 Central and you're living in Zone 2, then the card that you should be getting for the month is a Zone 1 to Zone 2 card. Will cost you £90 for a student discount. But every time you have to go to Zone 3 for some work, meet a friend, go to some event, then you'll have to pay with your separately. That'll be separately charged. That won't come under this. But typically, I think £90 does cover you for a month. But again, we don't need to go into these micro calculations because I've given you the number, £1,250 a month.
Okay. In addition to what you said, brother, we can have a break now for a second, and I'm gonna talk about the other stuff that is not that suitable for a law year in the future, inshallah. There are other things as well you can do to make ends meet, and I'm not mentioning them because I'm doing it or my brother is doing it, but it's like you can find an illegal accommodation, which is like tax-free, I would say. It will cost you like around 200.
These are council houses typically, right?
Yeah, there are some council houses, but the other ones as well. If you have some network and environment in London, you can find things which will cost you like 200 or 300 around it for accommodation. And for job opportunities as well, you can work up to 20 hours, but you can find other jobs as well on the other hand, which are like they're gonna pay you definitely less than an average salary. It will be like £7 or £8 per hour, but you can still find a job. You can still work as a worker. You can still do it, but consider that you are gonna study here at a university, so it's not gonna be easy for you. So, but still things are not that strict. We can make them a bit flexible for us.
Just one word of advice. Obviously, take this advice and tailor it to yourself. And different students, this advice will apply differently to them. How relaxed they are, how relaxed they're not. Just keep one thing in mind, that you come here, you're spending around £100,000 cumulatively, or £90,000, or even £80,000 on your degree, just to make a quick buck. Don't ruin your £80,000 degree, right? Because you're like, I'll work a few more hours at the store and I'll probably make £50 extra. But if that affects your semester results, if that affects your essay or the upcoming assessment, it's not worth it, because every lecture, and I did this calculation back in the day, you'd be surprised, how much does every lecture cost me? A 1 hour lecture here in the UK costs you £40-50 to sit through a 1 hour lecture. If you kind of break down the tuition fee, the number of lectures each semester, then how much does one lecture cost? If you're not doing your studies, then you might make a quick buck, and that's what a lot of students who come from foreign countries to the UK do. They find these sorts of jobs. They are constantly absent from lectures. They don't turn up at the university. They're working at the corner shop, at the kebab store, wherever it is. And then at the end of the day, they have a not so great degree to show up on their grade card. And that's a shame.
Yeah. Okay. After changing the topic, last things you mentioned that there are some scholarships that we can get. We are talking
Yeah.
about especially in bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are lots of things for masters and PhD degrees, but for bachelor's degrees, can we find a scholarship?
Yeah, that's what I actually meant is there are not a lot of scholarships, and which is why I said I'll come to that.
There are a lot for bachelor's degrees,
for
right?
bachelor's degrees, there are barely any UK government scholarships because all these other scholarships you hear about, master's scholarships, if you notice, they're all connected to the UK higher education system. They're not. They're very rarely given by the university themselves. I'll talk about the big ones: Chevening, Commonwealth. Chevening applies to Turkey. Commonwealth does not. Commonwealth applies to former colonies, roughly, of the empire. So that's funded by the British government. Commonwealth is funded by the British government. Chevening is funded by the British government. There are a few others funded by the British government, all for higher than bachelor's level. Then there are some scholarships that the in-house university scholarships, right? They're not scholarships funded by the government, the British government, but your own university, in some cases, does have their own scholarships, depending on the Faculty of Law might have its own scholarship, Faculty of Medicine might have its own scholarship. Again, at bachelor's level, even in-house university scholarships are rare. In-house university scholarships are also more common at master's and PhD level. Funding, as a rule of thumb, funding is more common for master's and PhD postdoctorate level, right? For bachelor's level, very rare. Again, this is not to say don't look for them. There are some universities, some departments within those universities who are rich or who have had a very generous donation given by an ex-alumni or who have had some corporate connection, and they do have some limited undergraduate scholarships. Now, when I say limited and when I say they're rare, what that means is the competition is cutthroat. Like, your chances of getting a master's scholarship is like 4 times higher than, and I say this very conservatively, this is not something, master's scholarship 4 times higher chances than a bachelor's one. I go to King's, which law department is like one of the best law departments in the world and one of the richest law department at King's, right? Yet, it has only one comprehensive bachelor's scholarship program, which is the Dixon Poon Law Scholarship. And I suspect that they're running out of funds because for the previous 1 or 2 years, they've not been advertising it a lot. We didn't even hear about who are our batch's Dixon Poon scholars. You know what I mean? Dixon Poon is the name of the scholarship. So this is talking about a law department which is a world-renowned, one of the best in the UK, one of the best in the world, and one of the richest in the UK as a law department, right? And even then, they don't have a huge scholarship program, right? But at masters, you go to any university, most degrees, a big chunk of the classroom will be scholarship students. So take that into consideration, and that should also be a main factor among all the other things that we have mentioned: costs, quality, system, assessments. One of the main factors of deciding whether to come or not should be, okay, if I have a higher chance of getting a master's scholarship, if I have a decent university back home, shouldn't I maybe do bachelor's back home and then go for master's and get the best of both worlds? A good degree back home for bachelor's, which is kind of free, or if not free, much cheaper.
Definitely.
And then a free master's, pretty much free, because there are, obviously, this is not to say that every master's student comes here on a scholarship. Most of them are still non-funded. But there are amazing scholarships, and your chances are higher. But then again, if money is not such a big consideration, or if it's not a consideration at all, you're bloody rich, then come by all means. You can come here and manage scholarships for some aspects. For example,
watching these videos, they're not gonna be like bloody rich.
Okay. So that's why. So I'm giving relevant advice. So when I came here, I managed to get funding for my residences through a very specific program. I can't go into the details of that. But so a part of what I am doing here is funded, right? But that might not be, or you might get a subsidy, if not a full funding for residences. You might get your residence costs might be slashed by a particular proportion, 30%, 40%. Same for tuition fees. Some universities for undergraduate degrees, what they do is, if you have a particularly high grade, you apply for scholarship program that is open, then they might give you a 30% rebate. Again, one last point, regretted to this day in my case, don't repeat that same mistake. When you're applying to admissions on the UCAS, 5 universities, you do not wait for an acceptance to apply for one of the university's scholarship programs. You apply to the scholarship program pretty much when you apply for admissions. I didn't do that. I'm regretting to this day. My law faculty did have a scholarship program. I was just mentioning about it. Not a very generous one. It gives you almost I mean, it is very generous in terms of how much money it gives per individual, but it does not select that many individuals. Do you know what I mean? But nonetheless, I got an acceptance at 2 a.m. India time, and I was like, okay, good. Now I'm going to apply to the scholarship. I opened the scholarship portal, and it's like, voila, it's expired. Where were you? And then I emailed them one email after the other. Please, I didn't know. It doesn't work like this back home. You know, we apply for scholarships after we get admissions. So how would I apply without admissions? They said, no, that's how it is. You have to apply with your so Google, search, go to the websites and see what scholarships are available and what are the closing dates, because you don't want to be biting your nails after you're accepted by a very prestigious university and then money is holding you back. So get a notebook out, write down all your important dates, the date of admission applications closing, the date of scholarship applications closing, everything that there is to know. Summer is the key. So when summers are approaching, start around March, April, and then this whole scholarship and admission season goes May, June, July, August, and September you will be here.
Okay, at the end of this whole conversation, bro, I don't think it's like possible for a average, like I'm thinking about Turkish guys. It's like it's not the deal. Like if I come here to work and study at the same time, I don't think it's possible, right? Because you have to pay like £20,000 roughly per year. So, and we said you can make up to like maximum is like 400-500. So,
yeah.
Well, what do you think? Is it possible, or I don't think you have to get another help? I mean, your family has to help you out. Yeah.
Yeah. 100.
Without it, you can't
funding
live here by yourself.
What you mean is funding your whole thing yourself.
Yeah.
No, out of question. That's not possible. You can't fund £80,000 working part-time while you're also studying. You'll probably land yourself in jail, because if you're absent from your university constantly and the government gets to know, or university reports you, you'll be deported. There's provisions for that. They'll think you've come here to kind of milk the British economy, which is a very misplaced notion. I mean, we only pump money into their economy, not taking anything from them. But the immigration regime has become so paranoid and strict here that some universities actually take attendance. Mine doesn't, but some do. And even if mine doesn't, if I'm constantly absent and then the university tries to get in contact with me, I don't reply, they might report me to the Home Office. And then the Home Office comes knocking on your door, and that's not a good scenario, bro.
Yeah.
That's very bad. So you can't do it. You have to have not a partial, but a major chunk of your funding has to come from some source other than you relying on part-time jobs. Like 70, 80, 90% has to be from somewhere else. Day-to-day costs, monthly costs, your own living costs, your food, perhaps your accommodation in some cases, and your transport, you can manage. You can be, if you want to be optimistic. But if you're thinking of funding tuition and everything else, no, it's not going to happen.
Okay, bro, I don't think there is a light at the end of the tunnel for us.
Bachelor's is a little bit of a dark and dreary picture. A master's is much brighter out there, but then again, it's your course, your university, and your faculty. So go and see if there are opportunities for scholarships. If there are, why would you miss out? Because I'm not saying there aren't many. I'm saying compared to I'm not saying there are none. I'm saying compared to masters or post-bachelor's education, they're very, very small. But depending on your odds, your numbers, your abilities, sometimes a scholarship, for example, is suited for a particular type of candidate. So they'll say, yes, you need the grades, yes, you need this, but then we're also looking for a candidate who's like this. And you might actually fit into that very narrow category. They might be looking for someone with a specific ability.
There's very little chance, but still...
Yes, there is. I to just make it clear, I know students who are doing their bachelor's with some sort of financial help from the universities here. So it's not all dark and gloomy, but yes, if money is a big concern, go and do your bachelor's back home, get some great grade, get a first class, get amazing grades on your bachelor's back home, whatever university it is. And I kid you not, if you do your bachelor's back home well, which means grades, you're fairly active, extracurricular activities, you have a good rapport with your professors who are willing to write recommendations for you, you're well within your chances to secure a full ride scholarship to the United Kingdom for masters.
Okay, bro, then just for a little bit, can we talk about like after graduation? Can you find a job when you graduated from university, or do you have to do your master's degree, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's another major concern, because it would have been many people would probably take the plunge of coming to UK and bearing all those costs if it was sort of guaranteed that after that you'll start earning in pounds. Because it's fine to spend like £100,000 if I'm going to make £100,000 back in like 2 years. But that's not the case again. Job security inside of the United Kingdom after studying a bachelor's degree in the United Kingdom or even a master's degree is far from guaranteed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Now, things are changing constantly. I mean, there's Brexit that's just happened. We'll have to wait and see how the immigration regime evolves. Because see, earlier, the people, just before Brexit happened, that were ahead of us as in non-Europeans in competition were the EU people and the British people. So they would be the first priority for jobs. Now the Europeans have been kind of kicked out. I mean, so the Britishers are the first. So it remains to be seen if the Europeans are now gone, are we going to take their place or is it going to make things easier for us? There's no simple answer to that, right? But I'll tell you what was the regime just before Brexit, and it kind of still continues to be the case, is that you're allowed your visa, the visa that you get when you come to study here, includes all your months and years of study, which is all your term time whenever your degree ends, and then 4 months plus that. Those 4 months are given to you to look for a job, right? But here's the rider. Number one, and these are all technicalities. Don't take, the real situation is even harder than that, even harder than this. But I'm giving you the law, what is on the paper. So what is on the paper is you can apply, number one, only to companies that are on a tier 2 sponsor list, right? So companies that have been given the license by the government to sponsor foreign candidates for jobs. So first of all, that kicks a lot of companies out because they're not on the sponsors list, right? So that leaves a smaller number of companies that you can apply for, or a smaller number of employers. These will typically be well-reputed, big, strong companies. What does that mean? That means the competition is higher for them as well, right? And what I have noticed as a candidate is that even though these companies do technically hold the license to sponsor you, but they might have an unspoken willingness to do it still. Because it is expensive for them to do that. It is long drawn and time consuming for them to do that. They have to go through a lot of paperwork. So if they find a British candidate who's just as good as you, or even slightly less good than you, they'll still probably take him or her, because why go through the pain, right? Why go through the financial costs? So right now, that's how the regime is, because the British government wants students, with the whole immigration paranoia, they want people to go back. They want people to give them the money, pump money into the British economy, but then go back. Now there is a rider to this. Something has recently changed. It's not fully been approved yet. It's not fully there as a law, but it's pretty much the promise has been made, and it's going to come into force this summer, probably this month. That is the reintroduction of the PSW. That's the post-study work visa. So what the British government is saying now, because their higher education has been suffering over the past few years, lesser and lesser people are applying because they're like, fine man, they don't allow us to work, so what's the use? Now to rescue their higher education system, they're introducing a 2-year post-work visa, which means that after you graduate, instead of those 4 months, you now have 2 years. In these 2 years, you can look for a job, you can work in a job, and you don't need a sponsorship. Now that sounds amazing, but again, there are some things I think about. For example, if I was a company, and I'm like, fine, this person has a visa, I don't have to sponsor him, he can work for my company, but only for 2 years. Would I invest in such a candidate? Because after 2 years, I'll probably still have to sponsor him. It is an advantage in many respects, is that if you live here, work in a company for 2 years, some company hires you and you really prove your performance, maybe after 2 years they're willing to take you on. Or you can work for 2 years on a short-term role and make a good amount of money, maybe half of your degree. So this is good news in some respects, but it's not all hunky-dory, because you have to understand that you only still have 2 years, and when you tell a company on your application form that yes, I do have a visa, you don't need to sponsor me, but it's only for 2 years, they might be like, do we want it, do we not want it? But I think it's still a major boost. It can be a game changer for many students who come here, can convince an employer to give them an employment, and they can then maybe give them an employment on this basis, then convert that into a sponsorship. If not, you'd probably still have made enough money in those 2 years. If you get an average job in London, after a bachelor's degree at a company, in corporate companies, in anywhere in the corporate world, you wouldn't be making less than £25,000 a month. If you spend 100,000, and that's 25,000 is I'm saying the lower bar, a starting salary for a starting job. So 2 years you'll probably make £50,000. You spend 100,000 at max, so you've already earned back half of it. If you want to do those calculations, I mean, obviously keep in mind that you'll probably save very little from that because living costs in London are high as well. But at least you've made back some money and you've gained yourself some very valuable British working experience. So that's the picture right now. Keep following Yusuf's channel for more. Whenever things change, we'll hopefully let you know. But that should be enough for now.
Thank you so much, bro, and it's been really useful for me. There's pretty much, maybe too much information inside of this video, and it's been really, really long, and I'll have to put subtitles, and it's gonna be a bit hard work for me as well. But it's okay. Hopefully, it will be useful for our other guests as well at the behind of the screens. And would you like to add something, bro?
No, that's it. Don't give up on your foreign education dreams. It's a journey that's worthwhile. Make your calculations, weigh your options, and make a very calculated decision. And you have the internet, you have your phones, you have your smartphones. There's nothing that I've said that's not there. The only thing that this video can help you is I've kind of condensed all of this in one video.
Yeah.
But apart from that, if you want some more information on any point that I've touched on, Google it. It'll not take more than a few clicks to get to the root of whatever you're looking at.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
May Allah protect you, brothers.
Like, comment and share. My brother Yusuf here.
It's fine. Allah emanet. Selamun Aleyküm.